Today is one of the Northwest's most colorful outdoor traditions, the annual Mount St. Helens Mother's Day climb.
It's a classic Northwest event. Yeah, this is like one of the classics.
Yeah, legendary
I feel
now.
like if you ski and you climb and you know where Mount St. Helens is, you probably have heard of this event. Hi, happy Mother's Day! Everybody say
Happy Mother's Day!
Happy Mother's Day! Yeah, it's a party up here every year.
You will see all different outfits, all different designs, and some pretty interesting sunburns as well by the time the weekend is over, too.
First Wombat Summit on Mount St. Helens. Woo!
All the climb permits are sold out. Hundreds of folks are here, including Maddie. She's climbed St. Helens some 30 times. She's brought several of her friends up to experience this tradition for the first time.
As long as you're relatively fit, it's a long day and it's hard, but you can make it. And I like taking new people on Mother's Day because it's a party, it's fun. Everybody has a huge smile on their face. It's not this intimidating mountain environment. It's a very supportive community, especially on this day.
But few know when and how this all began.
Didn't it get started like 20 years ago, or am I making that up?
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know.
Wasn't the original woman who did this, her name was Kathy?
In fact, it was a woman named Kathy.
Kathy was the first one to do it in a costume, as far as I know. I mean, I would be shocked if there was anybody else that day that was wearing a red chiffon dress, let me tell you.
Through her unique style, Kathy Phibbs broke rules and boundaries in the mountains. She blazed trails for herself and other women, and did so in a colorful, creative, and inspiring way.
Almost single-handedly, Kathy has changed the face of Northwest mountaineering.
But to understand the origins of the Mother's Day climb, we need to go back to Mount St. Helens' most famous day, May 18th, 1980. In the wake of the eruption, Mount St. Helens was closed to recreationalists. Climbers like Kathy had to wait 7 years for it to reopen.
The first day that it reopened after the blast,
She
was determined to be one of the first that day to head up.
I was so surprised the next day to open up the newspaper, and on the front page of the paper, in full color, back in the day when color was not used in newspaper much, there was Kathy in a pillbox hat and a red chiffon dress.
And if you were the photographer, like, who would you photograph on that summit, right? Duh!
And we were like, that Kathy girl, we would expect her to do something like that.
She was this amazing force of nature. She would have these wonderful takes on the normal things that climbers kind of like to be more serious about.
She'd always talk about how the hard boys, it was all a destination. She's like, it's not the destination, it's the journey, for God's sake, you know? She and I went rock climbing one time, and I had an inflatable pink flamingo on my climbing harness just for the picture.
Kathy was very direct. She had a bulldog kind of personality, just a force of nature who wanted to get out and do things in the out of doors, and had identified me as somebody who had a little bit of climbing experience. So she sort of said, okay, you're coming on the trip. Let's go find somebody with a car.
She has all this fun-loving part, but she also was a really good climber.
Mount St. Helens was not Kathy's first notable mountain summit. In fact, she was already an accomplished climber. She'd climbed Denali, scaled peaks in the Andes, and in the Himalaya.
She had a vision about how she wanted people to be in the outdoors.
Back in the 80s, most women climbed with men. Kathy wanted to climb with women. She thought that would be more fun. And so she and some other women started this group called Women Climbers Northwest. So we would go into the mountains, a group of us, and guys would see us and they would say, "Are you girls alone?" And we'd be like, "Well, no, we're with each other." It was really cool because Kathy was such a playful personality that the things that we did were playful. We would go on climbing trips with costumes and pink flamingos.
Those of us like Kathy's age and mine, we didn't have girls' sports in high school. And women's sports in college were just starting. So a bunch of us, we weren't raised to be athletes. We didn't have teams to join. We were that first generation that was going to law school, to med school, and We were going to go in the mountains together, and that was freedom.
It became this tradition to go ski St. Helens in costume.
We'd settle on the last Sunday before you had to get a permit because we were dirtbag climbers, right? We didn't want to have to pay for a permit. We didn't want to have to deal with that. And the last Sunday before permits was Mother's Day. And every time we went, people were like, oh, that's great. I love seeing you all dressed up. And we would invariably say, you can do it too. Come join the party.
Kathy was coming into her own, realizing her dreams of creating a community of women climbers, taking on challenging routes with pluck and panache. One of the most noteworthy is when she led a group of some 30 women to the summit of Mount Rainier on the centennial anniversary of the first women's summit made by Faye Fuller, a Tacoma school teacher. To commemorate the centennial ascent, Kathy wore a dress.
The first women mountaineers did go up in dresses and skirts because they weren't allowed to wear pants.
This wearing of dresses in the Alpine was an homage to the pioneering women of mountaineering. With a love of history, Kathy looked to the past for inspiration. She wanted a female mountaineering mentor, and since she couldn't find one, she invented one.
Kathy was a really good writer, and she created this alter ego named Miss Dish.
Women are the hope of climbing.
My protege, that spineless Kathy girl, had what her generation calls a freak out when she read this essay.
You're going to ruin me in the climbing community, she wailed.
Tisk. Young people are so conservative these days, don't you think?
Miss Dish is ready to expound on the future of climbing and on the wonderfully positive things that women bring to climbing, a role that is growing each year.
Why the single most prevalent influence in climbing over the next years will be the greater and greater numbers of women.
This is more than exciting. This is big news. This is a trend.
My dears, that Kathy girl is moaning again about radical feminist stigmas and renegade little old ladies. Poor dear thinks she will be tainted forever by our association. Miss Dish does not particularly welcome rebuttal to her statements. Miss Dish knows of what she speaks. A toast is always welcome, of course.
It's really great.
That was a little example of kind of who she was, this amazing sense of humor that comes out through the page. I mean, she's got this great skill. She saw in all of us something that we didn't see in ourselves at the time.
She got me to perform at a higher level and to take more risks and to be successful, where you feel like you're capable of doing more than you've done in the past. It's not a role model. It's deeper. It's more internal than that.
She was out as a climber, as a woman lead climber. A scarier, objectively more dangerous thing to be than an out lesbian.
In the expansiveness of the mountains, Kathy found a freedom to be herself.
For us as lesbians, we just really valued who Kathy was and how she was able to be her full self.
Part of Kathy's thing was to be an old goat. I mean, she started using hiking poles before anybody else I knew because she wanted to save her knees because she intended to do it like forever.
In 1991, Kathy and a close friend went ice climbing on a peak called Dragon Tail.
It was a cold, clear weekend, end of January. It's a good time to do an ice climb. The conditions seemed really good.
When it is stable conditions, it is a joy to climb, but it could avalanche.
And all we really know is they were high on the route. And then something went wrong.
Kathy was 33.
I think she was just getting rolling. Yeah. I mean, bringing these women together and giving permission to be outrageous and funny and high-spirited and physically competent in the outdoors. You know, she launched that for us.
She was never able to see today's generation of women in the outdoors, or to witness the popularity of the Mother's Day tradition she started.
Mother's Day has really been growing a lot over the last 5 or 6 years. It's really kind of exploded.
Now, more than 30 years since Kathy Phibbs stood on the rim of St. Helens in a red chiffon dress and pillbox hat, her friends have reunited in tutus and dresses to honor the memory of that Kathy girl. Kathy's parents, Phil and Gwen, come to support this tribute climb and join Kathy's old friends at the trailhead.
It's a very moving experience to see and kind of recreate the kind of life Kathy led and the spirit that she had. Everyone seems to be imbued with that spirit today. Enthusiasm, excitement, and lots of good humor. And that makes it the kind of day that she would lead. So it's very moving for us to see that you have this chance to relive a bit of her life. I think it gives a sense of closure to what happened to Kathy. That's weighed upon us all these years.
When people die young, it is really up to those of us who went on to live to go back and bring their history forward. And so being able to have something like the Mount St. Helens ski gives us that window. And so much of who she was is right there.
For me, it's always a little bit of a ghost mountain, because when you get to that rim and you look into the giant crater, it's beautiful, but there's also this sense of loss of what's missing. A double sense of loss because of the strong associations with this great friend who put a stamp on it.
Woo! Flamingos. All right. That's pretty cool.
And now, here at the summit of St. Helens, hundreds of others celebrate. Few know about Kathy, but Kathy's story in Mount St. Helens itself is not simply about what is no longer there, but what remains. And what remains of this day is simple. Do what that Kathy girl would do. Ski down in style.